Greetings. Beautiful warm sunny day here in Hawaii. Today's project is I'm gonna work with my vanilla orchids. The stage of my production at this point is making more plants. I'm trying to increase the orchids that I got. Some years back, a friend of mine let me strip some down from his trees down in Lower Puna, and I started out by just sticking them in the soil beneath a few of my coffee plants and citrus trees and letting the orchids begin to grow up. Well, that was more or less successful. The orchids seemed to contract some sorts of wilts or viruses on occasion when they came in contact with the earth here. So I switched my program a few years ago, and I've started growing all the orchids in soilless mediums in containers sitting on top of the ground and just letting them scramble through the trees. That's been a lot more successful, and it's been really easy for me too. We can cut these orchids up into little pieces and propagate them if we wish to. But at the rate that I need the orchid plants and that I can get to them, the simplest way for me is to do what's known in the gardening vernacular as pegging. I just take the vines, which will grow almost 6 foot in 6 months around here, pull them down, because that's part of the basic process in growing vanilla, is you have to keep the vines tamed. If they have something high that they can go into, I go after them with a stick and I pull them down from the plants, and then I bring them down low and loop them around kind of the same way I do my blackberries. It's pretty similar actually. And then some of the vines, I will take them and I will set them back into more containers and just put a rock on top of them, so I get a new vine that I can then cut loose and move over to another plant. At this point here, I'm growing the vanilla in coffee trees mostly. The coffee trees for me have been the most successful place to plant them. Tom Sharkey down by Hilo, I see he does them up his cacao. I tried them in citrus and found that the canopies were too dark, too dense. The orchid didn't do well. Coffee's a little better. The shade is spotty, and so it works. The orchid doesn't like full, hot, intense sun, but it doesn't like it when it's too dark either. So I've chosen to trellis them in my coffee plants. Of course, you could take on a more technological aspect to this and build trellises. There's a party over there by Captain Cook, I know, has a vanilla farm. Everything is in shade lath inside of a house, and they're using artificial mediums on PVC pipes and so on. It's totally high-tech stuff. Here I'm working with a much more naturalized approach to growing the orchid. Well, this right here is a coffee plant, and it has an orchid trailing through it all over the place. Right here you can see there's a little bit of soil on these roots. I had to pull this up. The orchid had scrambled from the coffee tree and had gone over here and was actually anchoring to the sawhorses next to my carport. And so, like I say, periodically grabbing these vines and coiling them back into the plants where they're supposed to be is part of the maintenance. My preference is using either 2 or 3 gallon nursery pots. This one here has a band of copper around it. It's going to keep the slugs out. It won't keep them out for good, but it's a good start. Anyway, inside the pot, I have filled it with chopped coconut hull. This is the hull from the coconut on the outside, and they bring it here to the island in huge quantities. Most of it comes from Sri Lanka. They have an industry there where they produce this product. A lot of us like to use this instead of sphagnum peat because it's much more sustainable. I like using it because it's soilless, doesn't have any diseases in it, it's pretty cheap, it's lightweight, you know, it's a really good thing to use. It's easy, comes in big bales. I don't pay a lot for it. Anyway, I've taken it and I put it right here into a container. Now the next thing I'm going to do is find a piece of the orchid that I want to put into this container to peg. That didn't take me too long. Here's one right here. This has scrambled out of the plant. It was laying down on the ground here a while ago. Now I'm going to take the orchid and I'm going to place it into a container at the base of the plant where it's a little bit shady down there. Alrighty. Well, okay, I've got my container down here at the base of the plant. You'll see the orchid produces these aerial roots. They grab onto everything. So I'm going to take part of it that's produced a root, I'm going to drop it inside the container here, and I'm going to push a little bit of the coconut hull on top of it. Then I'm going to take a suitable stone
I'll place the stone on the top of the orchid to make sure that it doesn't come loose from there. Now I'm pushing it backwards here into the shade just a little bit so that it has a little bit of rest.
Okay, well, just in case you didn't see that the first time, let's do it one more time. Here I have another bucket, again, filled with the coconut hull. Right here, I had one great big old vine, this one. Woohoo! Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's a big one. All right, so I'm going to put the pot right down there in the shade.
Okay, so once again, there's the tip of the orchid right there. And I got a piece of it here that's got the root on it. About right there should work. Down a little bit. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to pick up some of the cocoa hull, drop it right on top, put a rock on it to keep it in there.
Well, and then just to keep things from getting too messy, I'm going to take this and position it here somehow in this plant like that. And then I'm going to put a tie around it right there so it can't come loose. Another one here somewhere. There we go. There's one more. And I think we'll tie it right here too with a couple of these others. Now once these get started scrambling up the plants, there's no real need here to worry about attaching them, because if you look here under my finger, this is one of the aerial roots. There's another one here, and now I tell you, these things literally glue themselves down to a surface. Once they find something they can attach to, see here, this one's growing out, comes out here and hooks right on the trunk. It gets pretty firm on there. They literally glue themselves down to the surface. All right, here's a container that I did a year ago. This was pegged right down the row here off the same plants. I'm using, in this one, I used a little different medium. I have a mixture of the coconut hull and peat moss and perlite, but it basically soilless again. The orchid was set in here. It pegged itself. Then I went and I pushed a stick from pruning my coffee in here. Took it, leaned the stick up against the side of a coffee plant, and then the orchid just obliged by taking off and scrambling all through the plant. It's all over the top here. And this one hasn't gotten quite big enough in a year that I have to worry about pegging it or getting any more out of it. It's just managed to climb up to the top of the coffee. So there you have it. Pretty simple. This is really not a hard plant to grow. Delicious, delicious vanilla beans, though, are a whole other story. Vanilla beans are almost like cherimoyas. You have to go through and hand pollinate every little flower. And so that will be a retirement project for me as I run around and act like a bee and create the vanilla beans here. But well worth it. Almost all of us love vanilla. Hawaii is the only state in the United States where we can grow both vanilla and chocolate here, plus coffee. All the good stuff in life is all here in Hawaii. Can't do it in Connecticut. Sorry, not without a greenhouse. The orchid could be grown under hothouse conditions. I've seen some in San Francisco, for instance, in hothouses, producing. Since they have to be hand-pollinated anyway, it does work inside of a greenhouse. It's just it has to be a pretty big one, and you have to be willing to give up quite a bit of space, because this is a big orchid. As I said, 6 months in this climate, I have 6 foot of vine off the orchid. And my plants aren't that old yet. I think I started this project about 4 or 5 years ago. And at first, it wasn't very successful. I had a few problems. Now I'm starting to get her down. It's working out well. I'm looking forward to continue propagating these orchids. I want to see them pretty much on all the coffee trees all the way around the edge of my lot over here, at least near the house, where I can walk out and work with them. They bloom once a year. This area usually around April to May, and then you have to go in and hand pollinate those little flowers. There is a whole process in curing the vanilla beans and all that stuff too. So this is as much work as a combination between growing raspberries and growing cherimoyas, I believe. Both together is probably as much work as vanilla. If you were wondering why it's so expensive in the store, that'll answer it for you. Anyway, it's working out well over here. I'm liking the project. It's becoming one of my favorite orchids. And I can't wait to start making my own vanilla extract over here either. Happy gardening. Enjoy.